Just to check, Leroy, did you press record? I'm just waiting, Leroy, to make sure that you hit record. Can you let me know? Also, how's my volume?
Yep, you're fine, and I have started the recording.
Hey, here we go.
Hold on a second. Go ahead and will you also record, because I'm getting a prompt that there might be a recording issue. So go ahead and start your recording as well. Okay. Do you know how to do that?
All right. I think so. It's been a little bit, but
Sharing under the sharing thing on the control panel.
yeah, I'm under sharing, but it's not giving me a record.
Well, I'm pretty sure we'll be
Okay.
okay. I'm getting the recording. We'll have it. We should have it by the end of the session. So no worries. But I did get a prompt about something. So typical Mercury and Virgo doing their interactive thing. So
Oh, Mercury retrograde is always, real fun webinars to do. You never know what you're going to get, especially Mercury retrograde in Virgo, all those details. Yeah, I'm not coming up with anything that shows me how to record, so I'm going to say thank you for all your edits of all this, Leroy.
we're good.
Okay. Apologies, everybody, if I yelled in your ear earlier. We were in separate rooms with the door closed so we don't reverberate off each other. Here's my deep breath so Leroy has a pause point in editing. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our free Pay It Forward Mercury retrograde webinar. As you can see on your screen, Mercury's going to be retrograde from August 23rd through September 15th, 23. Going to go retrograde at about 22 degrees Virgo, all the way back to 8 degrees. And here we have Mercury retrograde in one of its own signs, which is why you are seeing Mercury on the screen twice. I always put the planet of this retrograde sign. Okay, there, I got it. Here's our housekeeping slide, which many of you are familiar with. You will get a PDF of all these slides in the next day or so after the webinar. So anytime you want to look at these slides, print them out, click on any blue hyperlink, you will be able to do that. One more housekeeping slide. The Jeffrey Wolf Green Association of Evolutionary Astrologers is going to have an online conference October 6th through 8th of 23 in a couple of months. These blue hyperlinks, you can go and see the registration. You can see the schedule of the speakers. I will be one of the speakers. Most of the speakers for this online conference are well-known second-generation astrologers through Jeffrey Wolf Green. So we'll have speakers with quite a bit of knowledge and practice in the world of astrology, according to J. Wolf G. As you can see at the bottom of your screen, you can get a 10% registration discount with the code Pluto. So look forward to seeing many of you there. Okay, here are our dates with Mercury retrograde. From exterior conjunction with the sun to the next one, you can see it's pre-shadow, turning retrograde, interior conjunction, which is always a highlight of Mercury retrograde when it is reversing direction and meets the sun, as it is between sun and earth. It's when it's closest to earth, but of course it's in the underground when it's in its interior conjunction. And so Mercury is actually going to be in Virgo for 68 days, July 28th through October 4th. And I always like to put up a little overview between the transiting sign and the polarity sign. So Mercury retrograde in Virgo, it's reviewing all of the details and routines we mindlessly participate in, that Virgo grindstone, one foot in front of another. And so it asks us to step back and ask, how do I prioritize my efforts in life? Effort is that famous Virgo word. And through the Pisces polarity, we are learning to step back, release, and renew life's purpose, or that larger picture in our world. We'll expand on this back and forth a little bit as we go through our slides. Here's the Mercury stationary retrograde chart. I always make it for Washington, D.C., and I always use 0 Aries houses so that this is the generic chart that is basic to all of us, anywhere we may be. As you can see, there's a lot of activity going on in that chart, including what some will call the mystic rectangle, which is where you will have 2 trines, 2 sextiles, and we have that nice, beautiful square. We also have a trine in the earth signs when Mercury turns stationary retrograde, just shy of meeting Mars. But we also have some oppositions going on. We still have Pluto square the nodes going on. And so as Mercury turns stationary retrograde, it's in orb with Mars of opposing Neptune. And so when we look at that Virgo Pisces, here again, we're going to emphasize which directions we choose to expend our energy. Mercury, Mars, making that effort. Are we again being busy, busy, busy with not even paying attention to what we're doing? Or are we taking time to breathe, that Pisces polarity, and take that bigger picture into consideration, and then have Mercury and Mars finishing up in Virgo, move with direction. Now, interestingly, Sun is just ingressing into Virgo on the same day, and it's within orb of opposing Saturn retrograde. So more of the same. However, with the Sun-Saturn opposition, this, by the way, is the halfway point or highlight of Saturn's retrograde cycle with the Sun. Give you exact dates and degrees in a few slides here. And so one of the things about Sun-Saturn planetary pairs is, what can we change in our world and what can we not change? Because Saturn is always going to bring us the limitations in space, time, even as it makes its transit through Pisces. And of course, because Pluto is still squaring the nodes of the moon, it brings up all these relationships. South node Libra, North node Aries, brings up all that relationship consideration of giving and receiving, including whether we're going to choose to participate in relationships or not. Oh, one more thing. Moon in Scorpio is going to be in an exact opposition to Uranus in Taurus, as Uranus is slowing down to go retrograde at 23:05 Taurus, August 28th, 5 days later. So this is a Mercury stationary retrograde where we really want to make an effort to breathe, slow down, count to 10, count to 100, whatever we need to do to get through the usual Mercury changing directions, frustrations, details that can come up for us in its material world. Now, hopefully, again, that grand trine that you see between Mercury, Mars, Pluto, Uranus, hopefully that will allow us to calm a few things down and walk through our world as peacefully as possible. Now, for any of you who are new to my Mercury retrogrades, I use the chart developed by Michael Munkasey. There is a blue hyperlink that you can download. That is a synopsis of some research he had done from old letters that were released by the Library of Congress. He came up with a fifth house Pluto. I happen to have liked this one, and I've started using this chart over the last 2-3 years. So you can look at this in more detail later on. What I wanted to do was the bi-wheel of Mercury stationary retrograde over this chart. Now, this is going to be accurate no matter what July 4th chart you use, whatever houses you're going to look at. What we've got with this Mercury retrograde is it reverses directions just a degree, less than a degree shy of coming back to Mercury or Neptune, going over Neptune. And transiting Neptune in the skies right now is still with an orb of opposing itself and making last quarter squares to Mars. So I put these dates on the screen for you again. We're past the time that Neptune made the 5 last quarter squares to Mars in oppositions to itself. But this Mercury retrograde, as you can see by that blue circle, it's going to trigger all these Neptune transits again from the last few years. And it's almost like, oh, more of the same. That political split between our beliefs evolving around gun control, women's bodily rights, gender rights. Pick one of the major subjects that's going on in our country right now, and you see just this extreme split on our ideas, our beliefs, our attitudes. In other words, Neptune has been bringing up for the last few years, the beginning of this decade. You can even include the end of the last decade. Extreme judgments in our society over who's right, who's wrong. And if you're not aware of this, Neptune works through cycles of confusion and clarity. The confusion cycle breaks everything down that then leaves us in a void till we turn inward to a higher power. And sooner or later, then the aha clarity moments come for us. And when we look at long-term transits like Neptune and Pluto, they don't just take years to go through on a collective level, they take decades. And so you can just see between the last decade and as we are moving through this one, we have major things going on in our country with this opposition. And by the way, I'll back up and say this right here. The history of our country has always had inclusive versus exclusive trends. And these are the 3 major aspects highlighted by these arrows that you can see. Squares and oppositions that have just had us have time periods where we are inclusive with others, with ourselves, and time periods where we are battling it out with others and battling it out with ourselves, as in a civil war. And so here we are in one of those trends again with this USA Pluto return. By the way, Pluto is going to go stationary direct October 10th at 27:54 Capricorn, 20 minutes away from having another conjunction to itself. That's how you know we're still in the middle of our USA Pluto return, and it's going to take a decade or 2 or 3 to really move through it. But we're also going through this with Neptune to itself and Mars. And so here's Mercury stationary retrograde triggering all this. And oh, by the way, if you're into politics, Wednesday, August 23rd is the first debate with the massive Republican Party and all their candidates, or massive candidate base, I guess I'd say. That will happen, I think it's Fox News. So here we are with everybody in the Republican Party who wants to be a candidate. Maybe there's a few who didn't make it on the stage. And the big one who's not going to be on the stage, Donald Trump, having a debate. Mercury stationary retrograde. That could be fun. I wonder if there'll be any technical issues. We'll find out. We'll hear about it if there are. More I could say, but we'll just leave it for there. Now, if you're new to my Mercury retrograde webinars, there are certain slides that I use all the time, and I tend to go through these slides pretty fast. You will have them to review at your leisure when you get the PDFs. The thing I want to point out about Mercury retrograde in 2023 is that it spends 7 out of 12 months traveling through Earth signs. This is because we have 3 Mercury retrogrades completely in the 3 Earth signs, and then 1 in Earth back to fire. So communications in general, slow down. How can I handle what it is I need to communicate with others? Sometimes it can be about being slow and deliberate, literally with your words and communicating. This might be most helpful if it is a sensitive conversation. Take a breath, slow down your words, think while you're talking to the best of your abilities. Now, planetary retrogrades are geocentric or Earth-centered phenomena because from our perspective here on Earth, those planets in the heavens will appear to slow down, reverse, go forward again. Retrogrades in general are trying to throw off consensus conditionings and return to ourself. Now, if you happen to be somebody who was born during Mercury retrograde, you do pretty good during Mercury retrograde for the most part. I have a nephew who was born during Mercury retrograde, sensitive Pisces, so he's going to get little details this time around, but he looks for Mercury retrograde because he knows that for him personally, it's a time period where he can make decisions and move things forward, maybe easier than those of us born with Mercury direct. Here are 2 visuals on the astronomy of Mercury. It only takes 88 days to go around the sun, but because it has 3 to 4 retrograde cycles, it appears to take a year to go through the zodiac, just like the sun and just like Venus. The reason you will never have Mercury more than the sign before, same as or after, is because from our Earth perspective, right here, Mercury never appears to get more than 29 degrees away from the sun, even as it's going around. Here's a visual of any planetary retrograde. This is Mercury. You can see how it has a pre-shadow. Oops, here's the pre-shadow, then it has the retrograde, then it has the post-shadow that we work through. Now, Mercury has rulerships of 2 archetypes. We call its rulership a Gemini in 3rd house, the outer archetype of Mercury because of the active polarity. I'm not going to belabor any of these. We're going to move on. I'll show you the inner side of Mercury in just a moment here. But Mercury retrograde, release excess thought. Our mind is saturated. It's hard to process. It's about turning inward, quieting our mind so we can gain clarity. It's a temporary time period where we literally shift left brain to right brain. And you can see this from the fact that Gemini points to Sag, ruler Jupiter, right brain. Virgo points to Pisces, ruler Neptune, deepest unconscious beliefs possible. Mercury retrograde in general also, we've got to find quiet time. It does not matter what sign it's in. But in the midst of that, there's all the details of Mercury that we have to take note of and pay attention to. While we sometimes want to do the escapism from Mercury, it's not always the thing we are capable of doing. So how well can you take a deep breath as you're ready to yell at the top of your lungs to tell your husband he's muted you? I can get the point. Here's an inner side of Mercury. This is because its Rulership of Virgo in the 6th house is the passive polarity. And it is also that earth element. Now, earth can be outer or, no, all the earth signs are inner. Sorry about that. That's also because of that. But in general, this archetype of Virgo in the 6th, it's the conscious mind and left brain, but it's where we can analyze, self-reflect, adapt, reason, self-improve, discriminate, purify. This is all emphasized during this Mercury retrograde in Virgo. And of course, from the perspective of evolutionary astrology, the Virgo Pisces polarity contains the concept of sadomasochism, consensus conditioned guilt of right wrong conduct, standards of conduct linked to atonement or anger. And all this is based upon patriarchal religious distortions. It is the essence that creates this criticism inwardly of ourselves and outwardly of others. But in essence, what the Virgo 6th house archetype is working through is learning to be of service to our higher self. How do we self-improve? How do we love ourselves and treat ourselves better? How do we do this with another person? How do we broaden it out all the way to society? We'll have a few slides on this. And of course, that Virgo 6th house is our nervous system. It's where we worry, have anxiety, self-doubt, procrastination, excuse making, some of those quote unquote negative traits that come. Again, almost all of them can be linked to these patriarchal distortions that we have on the planet here for thousands of years. Mercury retrograde in Virgo is a time period to throw them off and open ourselves up to that Pisces polarity that we would call natural law. So here's just a few slides giving you a little more information on that. We're going to repeat a little bit here. So Mercury retrograde in Virgo, we can have all kinds of detail overloads that can create confusion for us, indecision, doubt, procrastination. We can work and have, well, we can have all of these distortions of the Virgo archetype surfacing during this retrograde time period. And that's because our conscious mind and that Virgo ability to analyze is quick to see what isn't working, what is wrong, what we need to change or do better. And so it's going to be very important that you take a deep breath, that you slow down, that you don't rush into your mindless self-talk. If I didn't have bad luck, I wouldn't have any luck at all. Oh, how can I change that affirmation or mantra? So it's going to be important that you're not judgmental of yourself, that there's no one perfect here. Virgo sees imperfection, but as we learn through its polarity with Pisces, that as a pair, the path to perfection is step by step and making those efforts that Virgo does so well. So be gentle with yourself as much as you can, no matter what your frustrations or depressions or doubt, whatever it is that you quote unquote will call emotionally negative. It's just there to help you grow. Can you accept it and learn from it rather than judging yourself or judging others? Now, because Virgo's an earth sign, this Mercury retrograde, all of them this year in 2023 are going to bring up issues around resources, money, and finances. Then in general, as Pluto has been retrograding, as it retrogrades back into Capricorn twice, it doesn't want to let go of resource control, hoarding, etc. And so You'll see this with the Mercury-Pluto aspects that I show you. This is going to be a specific time period to really ponder what is of value to you in the material world. And it's possible during this retrograde cycle, we can see resources lost or gained, depending upon our individual prior efforts and karma. There's nothing fated positive, there's nothing fated negative. It's what each one of us have been making efforts with, and of course, how it relates and reflects to our own chart. We said it earlier, Mercury rules electronics in general, or co-rules it with Uranus, depending on how you want to look at it. So it's not always unusual during any Mercury retrograde, but we can see it with this one in Virgo, that we can have our devices break down or die. Very easy to have software issues, because as you know, with software, there's no room for error. And if something gets wrong, you are going to have to redo it until every single little symbol or whatever you want to call it in the programming world is absolutely perfect. So Mercury retrograde in Virgo can see our web programmers, anybody that works with that kind of stuff, having to slow down and really make sure that they, I'm just going to say, cross their T's and dot their I's in order for the software to work. We'll see what we have happen with just all the electronics connecting to each other. Can we have somebody break a cable laying Mercury direct? Yes. But we can also have that kind of stuff just seem to intensify for us a little bit when Mercury is retrograde, and especially now in Virgo. As I said, sadomasochistic patterns can be exposed in this retrograde cycle especially, and the exposure is to help us see how unnatural these patterns are, all right? And so what we will typically experience is that inner outer criticism where we tear something or someone down, or someone's tearing us down. Sound like US collective politics, anybody? When are we going to get past that? Neptune's transit through Pisces. Oh, Saturn in Pisces too. Stay tuned. In case you're not aware of this, consensus religion teaches us that God is perfect. And it's easy to see that we humans are unperfect. We're imperfect. We're not there yet. That imperfection creates guilt. We can't pray ourselves perfect. We have to go through the evolutionary effort to evolve. And so we're instilled with this condition of guilt. And if we feel we need to atone for it, we fall into the victim pattern, which in its extreme is the masochist. And then with this Mercury retrograde, we have to learn those healthy boundaries with other people. When we're atoning, we let ourselves get run over. I deserve to be punished. I'm not worthy of. And so this is an excellent time period to deal with any of your victimization issues and go, wait a minute. I deserve, I am, I breathe. I deserve to be treated with respect. Your freedom ends at the end of my nose, and vice versa. And it's also where we have to learn to unconditionally love ourselves through any and all imperfections. We all have them. It is an excellent time period to review any standards of right, wrong conduct. Those standards, especially the religious ones, is what induces guilt in us. And as if you follow any news, there's been so many articles about the religion of nuns, N-O-N-E-S. I don't belong to any religion. And this is Neptune in Pisces finishing up a 165-year cycle through the zodiac going, these human-made religions are based upon some really crazy stuff. And how do we break out of that? Especially if it's been instilled within us for lifetimes. Bless you, Mercury retrograde and Virgo, because we can. This is an excellent time period to throw off those old beliefs and those old attitudes and to recreate new affirmations for yourself. Now, if we have the induction of guilt, conditioned guilt, and we relate to the anger or victor side, these are the sadists of the world. I'm going to hurt you before you can hurt me. I'm going to fight back. And so we may have situations or circumstances then where we have to adjust. We have to back down. We have to change attitudes and behaviors. Okay, I can't go around just being angry at everybody. I'm not going to make very many friends. How can I look at myself? And here again, it still comes back to self-love. And when we deeply inwardly love, it allows us to calm down. It allows us to take a deep breath before we bite back first. And so, where is it necessary in those anger situations to review our thoughts, our words, our actions? Again, when we love ourselves, we calm down. We're not on edge, like we've got to, we don't feel like our back's up against the wall all the time. We're learning to trust the universe, and then we reconnect and move through the universe a little easier. Of course, as we said, this is in general, but specific to Mercury retrograde in Virgo. Any necessary communications need to be had, and they need to be repeated. However many times you've got to have the conversation, it is there to go through again, until both sides can understand each other's perspective and point of view. Doesn't mean you are going to agree. You may still have that agree to disagree. But we've got to have that Virgo openness to communicate and hear and analyze. Now, because Virgo is sandwiched between Leo and Libra, one of the archetypes of Virgo is sometimes those necessary experiences of humiliation in order to recognize that we are not on top of the Leonian pyramid. In other words, we have to burst our bubble and we have to learn how to move forward as equals. Virgo takes us from, again, the Leonian top of the pyramid. Virgo flips the pyramid, puts us on the bottom. Libra helps us work out with that Star of David, the two pyramids together as equals. Easier said than done, but we can go through this in our relationships and our communications when Mercury's retrograde in Virgo. As we had spoke earlier, this is the archetype of learning how to serve ourselves in better ways, to serve other people, our family, co-workers. Oh, and we can learn this on collective levels, and we can learn this with other species as well. And finally, just want to point out that healthy Virgo is gentle. It does give. It serves. It loves. It's self-loving. It's loving of others. Polarity Pisces with healthy boundaries. And of course, this is the archetype that includes diet, exercise, and rest. So this is an excellent Mercury retrograde to make, any efforts that you want to make in your temple of your soul, your body, and improving your relationship with your body. And the beauty is Mercury retrograde in Virgo throws everything up. And so you can try and try and try until you actually succeed in achieving a new way of eating healthier or exercising better or turning off those electronic devices before bed and actually calming down and maybe doing some Pisces mantras or meditations. This is an excellent Mercury retrograde for all that stuff. When Mercury's retrograde, it points to its polarity Pisces. And so this means instead of that Virgo busyness, to the degree we can, we have to make that effort to simplify our life, to prioritize what is truly important to us, and let the rest of it just kind of fade away. And as we make that effort to simplify our life, that includes finding that quiet time, and in this case, specifically, to hear what universal source, i.e. Pisces, is conveying to us. It allows our right brain to make sense of all the details in our life. By the way, if you are new to astrology and listening to this podcast, Neptune and its rulership of Pisces in the 12th house is the last of the 12 archetypes, and Pisces in 12th contain all 11 archetypes that came before it. That is why it can sometimes be so confusing. That is also why evolutionary astrology considers Pisces, Neptune, Pisces to be the closest archetype in astrology to representing universal source, great spirit, God, goddess, big kahuna, whatever you want to call it. And so this retrograde cycle says we must quiet down and open up to hear deeply on inner levels. And so there is the potential to have religious and spiritual breakthroughs. Again, we can all get overstressed here. We all want to feel safe and secure. Most of us want inner and outer peace. Can we give everyone the freedom to follow their own religious and spiritual paths, to find their own way to source? Can we all take a deep breath and open up and feel that energy in us and feel it within others? And one of the best ways for spiritual evolution from EA's perspective is to interact with nature and all other species on the planet, to relax, to breathe, to connect. We all species have a right to be here. Can we just take time to play and or simply live life? Virgo is the workaholic. Mercury retrograde in Virgo can allow us to release that if that is our tendency. Again, Pisces can go, the archetype of Pisces rules sleep. How many of you have ever been able to go 48, 72 hours without sleeping? We go crazy. And so this Mercury retrograde can be about rebalancing that energy to sleep. And that is Pisces. Can we create a new evening routine for getting our best sleep possible? I read somewhere recently that about 1 in 5 middle-aged elderly people have sleep issues. And so it's very common, more common than we think. And so this, again, is an excellent time period to readjust and just breathe and be okay. Can we search for common language that can give us an emotional connection to each other? that we are all one, we are all interconnected of Pisces. Can we agree to disagree and be peaceful with each other? And one more time, recognizing, as I said before, the path to perfection is one foot in front of another. Practice, practice, practice. But doing it as we are evolving our beliefs and attitudes. You know, we can't just talk about change. We have to make the effort to change. Sometimes the distortion of Pisces is the mistaken thought that we can sit there in a monastery or convent and pray ourselves perfect to nirvana. It doesn't happen that way. We've got to make the effort, and we've got to learn to have that Piscean unconditional love through effort. And then we can find ourselves making those leaps forward, as well as those baby steps forward in our life. And so I do want to say that because Pisces is the last of the 12 archetypes that includes everything, evolutionary astrology will relate to this archetype as being the ultimate of nature, including the wildness of nature. Because nature isn't always gentle. Sometimes there are cataclysmic events in evolution. So it is possible that this Mercury retrograde might emphasize a little bit of the climate change issues for us. We only have to look at Maui, or you could be in the Northwest Territories of Canada, or you could be in Southern California having your first tropical storm in 80 years. You know, we can, everywhere we look, we're seeing what feels like an increased recognition that the climate is speaking up. Mama Nature's a little mad. And she's going to say, okay, if this is how you're going to act, here's how I'm going to act. So, how can we wake up to this? How can we move through our own personal little changes? I'll show you a couple of statistics in a little bit, but I thought I'd bring this up, and I actually did a free webinar with EA Zoom. You can probably go to their YouTube channel and just search my name, or I think I titled it The Astrology of Climate Change. I did a little bit of research on my own, and so I took a few slides out of there. You know, not just this Mercury retrograde, but just Neptune's transit through Pisces, just everything we've done over the last 200-300 years. Nature's going to come back and force us to make changes. You know, how do we miss how the stuff is increasing? Little detail for you. The average sea level will rise 4 feet for each degree Celsius. We increase our average temperatures, and we're on our way to having the hottest summer or the hottest year on record. 29% of US citizens and 40% of the world's population live in coastal areas. We will continue to see mass migrations, and we may just find ourselves with this Mercury retrograde having light bulbs of awareness come through our conscious mind and recognizing some of this stuff. Here's what I researched when I did this Zoom talk. I went back and tried to see when we really discovered or started using coal and gas and oil. Now, we've been aware of coal for a long time. Our ancestors, hundreds of thousands of years ago, would see those coal seams burn. But the first time we really successfully started using coal was in 1776, the James Watt steam engine in UK. And there's no date, so I just chose the middle of March noon. But I thought, oh, isn't this interesting? Here's Pluto at 2759. Remember I said Pluto's going to go stationary direct October 10th, 2957? Well, here we are, right close to that. And what have we been seeing going on one cycle after we started using coal on an increasingly more massive level? It's like it's decreasing, and the jobs in that industry are decreasing no matter what, because we just can't. It's too cost prohibitive compared to gas and oil, but that doesn't mean it's right. But I thought, oh, isn't this so interesting? Here's transiting Pluto, here's transiting Neptune. Oh, and here was, 1776 is the same year as the USA independence. So here's that Neptune again, and here's Mercury retrograde. The Mercury retrograde may not be specific with all of this, but I just popped into my head today and I thought, I'm going to draw those charts out. And I had forgotten about the Capricorn Pisces connection. Oh, got Mercury retrograde there at 8 degrees Pisces. Mercury's going to go stationary direct at I'm blanking out. Was it 8 degrees Virgo? Oh, just right on it, opposing it. Gas, a little easier. That was actually discovered June 4th, 1825 in New York. And here again, we've got some of those Capricorn planets. Ooh, I used 12 noon, so we don't know what time it was. It could have been in the morning, you know, chances are. Moon maybe in Capricorn or Aquarius gas. Um, who knows for sure? I didn't see anything specific here for Mercury retrograde, but I just thought again, I'd put these charts in here for you. And here's oil. And of course, oil, when we first successfully started being able to mine it out of the ground was in 1859, and this one was in Pennsylvania. Here's the Pisces, Neptune and Pisces again. This was one cycle ago, Neptune in Pisces, and here's Neptune traveling right here, right now. Oh, isn't that interesting? One cycle later with Neptune, there's debate over what rules oil, Neptune or Pisces. It can go both ways, but one cycle later, and here we are going, oh, we can't keep burning this stuff anymore. We'll burn ourselves up. Here's our Virgo planets again and another Mercury retrograde. So this is the best I could research for those charts. You can play around with those yourself if you'd like to. You've got them for your own knowledge and use in the future if you want. In regards to the Mercury retrograde aspects, because it moves so fast, it always aspects several planets during a retrograde cycle. And in evolutionary astrology, we specifically use 360-degree cycle of phases and aspects. It allows us to recognize just how active Mercury is. Now, here it is for you visually. This was first brought out by Dane Rudier in his lunation cycle book with the sun and the moon. Jeffrey Green extrapolated it to all the planets. I did make a few changes. Jeffrey used to put 0 degrees here, and I thought, the way you talk about it, it really fits Aries to Pisces when you look at the whole circle. And so you can see these 8 phases, and you always compare. You start with the slower moving planet, you go counterclockwise to the faster moving planet to get their phase and their aspect. Exception to the rule. The nodal axis is always compared to the planets in a clockwise fashion. So here are the aspects Mercury makes in this cycle. It always has aspects to Venus and Mars, just so happens to have the same one to Venus 3 times. It's not always the case, but we have Jupiter, Chiron, Pluto, and the nodal axis. What is interesting is we have 3 planets change directions during the specific Mercury retrograde. Again, Uranus retrograde August 28th, Venus direct September 3rd, Jupiter retrograde September 4th. Here are those dates for you with the sun. I always repeat this one because we're going to point out this is the highlight of the Mercury retrograde, which will come September 6th, 13.5 Virgo, when Mercury is passing backwards over the sun. Here is the chart for that date, September 6th. As you can see, we still have the planets kind of all over the chart. The thing to point out is that we have 7 planets retrograde. I include Chiron. If you include Eris, it's 8. We have Pluto, Saturn, Neptune, Chiron, Eris, Jupiter, Uranus, retrograde with Mercury. Ooh, boy, that's a lot of stirred up energy to throw off. Old beliefs, old attitudes, habits, behaviors, just throw off the past left and right. It also is a pretty energetic situation to maybe create some upsets and some chaos with all of those planetary retrogrades going on. Can you imagine a little soul born during this time period? Talk about a little rebel coming in. Oh boy, take a deep breath. But it also then, retrograde planets, gives us that energy to throw off the old mercurial stuff and apply a Virgo effort to however we want to change. That Virgo effort to procrastinate and make excuses. With this many planetary retrogrades, there are no excuses. You might as well just get off your duff and put one foot in front of another and change however life is presenting itself to you. Now, Mercury and Venus are always in aspect to each other during both of their retrograde cycles. What we had happen specifically here is Mercury had a conjunction to Venus late July, just before it went into pre-shadow at late Leo, 28 degrees. Now Mercury will make 3 waxing semi-sextiles to Venus. When Mercury is ahead of Venus, our mind is racing ahead of Venus to support whatever values and needs are important to us with ourself, with our relationship, with our resources. Well, this Mercury retrograde following Venus retrograde is going to spark us how we want to prioritize those Venusian and Leo values, how we want to act upon them. And so as Venus turns stationary direct, September 3rd, okay, just before the interior retrograde conjunction Mercury-Sun, if we find during this Mercury retrograde things are not quite moving forward, then again, this is the Mercury review that has to follow with Venus. Okay, what do I need to fine tune? Where is my Venus and Leo thinking my way or the highway? And Mercury retrograde in Virgo is going, hold on, you're not in charge. Universal sources, and you don't always get your way. Here's what's highest and best for you. And so it may tell us that that Pisces polarity is asking us to simplify something somewhere in our lives. Because this Venus retrograde in Leo has been a little feisty. All those planets splayed around the whole circle. There's a lot of activity, all those retrograde planets. And as I said, this Venus retrograde in Leo is challenging us to the Aquarian objectivity. And Mercury's going to follow through and help out. So whatever's not going forward for you through this retrograde cycle, do the Venus review. And oh, by the way, I'm going to point out a little interesting tidbit for you. It so happens that next year, Mercury will make 3 conjunctions to Venus in 2024. You can see these right here for you. I didn't point out, I'm sure one or two of them are probably during Mercury retrogrades. And what can happen is Mercury can make 1 to 3 conjunctions with Venus and 1 to 3 conjunctions with Mars. Venus can make 1 to 3 conjunctions with Mars. However, Mercury and Venus, inner planets, can only make 1 opposition to Mars. And those always happen during Mars retrograde. So we just are going to happen to have 3 more Mercury-Venus conjunctions next year to help us work on those values. Mercury's going to also have 3 conjunctions to Mars here in 23-24. These are going to be sandwiched around the next Mercury retrograde, the end of the year. So here's Mercury right now waning to Mars, waning semi-sextiles, those balsamic reflections. And then it's going to have a conjunction the end of October at 12 degrees Scorpio, the first one listed here. And so Mercury Venus wants to move forward. Mercury Mars is saying, and where do I really want to make an effort? Where do I really want to act upon what is important to me? And so because of this Mercury retrograde in Virgo, okay, it's going to cover our resources, and the fact that these planets are all in the second half of the zodiac, it's going to cover relationships. So there's reflecting upon resources and relationships going on here with Mercury Mars. Take that Piscean deep breath. What is important to me? I only have so much time in a day. I only have so much energy on my body. How do I prioritize? How do I work smarter, not harder? We can still make an extra effort with communications, though. Mercury can be very good at that in Virgo. Okay, let's talk about this again. Are we saying it? Did I hear you with what you were saying? This is what I think you said. Da, 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 da. Beware of overworking. Okay. Trying to get everything done. Mercury, balsamic, Mars. If it's not easy to do here, what do I have to resolve? How do I make my life easier? How do I best use my energy output? Here's then, oops. One slide before that. Hold on. This is a review from the last Mercury retrograde. Mercury is retrograde in Earth signs this year. Mercury went retrograde from April, May at Taurus 15 to 5, Jupiter's going to go retrograde September 4th, just before the interior conjunction. Its retrograde is 15 to 5 Taurus. Look at how close those two retrograde cycles are. They're not at the same time, but they're the same degrees. And what I said earlier is Mercury will messenger resource issues to us. How do we deal with money? How do we deal with our budget? How do we deal with our material stuff? Resources in general. And then Jupiter's going to expand that into our consciousness that we're going to make an effort with later this year. So I had said, pay attention to any internal messages around resources to hopefully shift Mercury retrograde, and we have waxing trines to Jupiter. Just reflect back on that Mercury retrograde that we had late April, early May, or April, May, 2 months Mercury in Taurus. Now here we are 2 months with another retrograde cycle in Virgo, but we got the trines to Jupiter. So this is the potential to bring us personal rewards from any prior efforts we have made this year. However, because it's the waxing trine only 1/3 of the way around the chart, this can still be an excellent time period for expanding upon any Virgo efforts that we intuit to be helpful in creating resources, not only for ourselves, but for others if we're in partnership or family situations or working with co-owners in a business. Left brain and right brain are working harmoniously together. You still want to pay attention to those intuitive hits on any changes you need to make. But this is the nice part of Mercury retrograde in Virgo. Those nice waxing trines to Jupiter. Oh, I get it. Oh, this is how I need to adjust. Oh, I get it. No, I don't think I really want to go overboard Jupiter and expand in this situation or business right now. I like where I'm going with my steady road right here. Listen to your intuition just as best as you can. And of course, because of Virgo, we can get a lot of intuitive hits on how we want to evolve and expand our diet, exercise, and rest habits. And those waxing trines, it's an ease of effort. So any little bit of effort can actually have, expanding rewards. So don't look at Mercury retrograde in Virgo as not being the right time for diet, exercise, and rest. Great time. I wanted to put this one in for you. How do we bring about technology serving spirituality? Virgo can really be in that work world. It can be in that technological world, tied to our computers during Mercury retrograde because things go wrong and everything takes a little bit of an extra effort. Still taking a very deep breath and pacing ourselves through. Because one more time, Mercury's going to turn retrograde, and then a few days later, so is Uranus. And between the two of them, they can bring upsets, not just with technology, but geopolitical events, more climate events, people being frustrated with all of these planetary retrogrades. So really make that effort to breathe and pace yourself through whatever comes your way in this world. Okay, couple more slides. I just wanted to point out the Virgo Pisces polarity force that's coming along here late this summer, fall. Mars in Virgo, Mercury in Virgo, Sun in Virgo, Venus in Virgo. They all make oppositions to Saturn in Pisces, retrograde, and they all make oppositions to Neptune in Pisces, retrograde. Remember, we have Saturn balsamic Pisces finishing up their own 30, I think Saturn and Neptune are 36-year cycles. They're finishing up their own 36-year cycle of what we can manifest or not manifest. And those two in Pisces have a lot to do with the whole issue of Earth events and climate change that's going on for us right now. Well, the inner planets here are getting involved in the picture. And as they go through Virgo, along with Mercury's retrograde cycle, they got all their own stuff to think about, and then they got all their own intuitive hits that are popping through, opposing these two outer planets in Pisces. And so there is a lot of intuitive hits and just conscious details sparking into consciousness right now through this retrograde cycle. Those of you who know me know my 2 Pisces mantras. What would you have me know, Source? What would you have me do, Source? You can definitely ask these during Mercury retrograde in Virgo. We're all going to be wrestling with this polarity in some way between our material and non-material worlds. What's important to us? What do we need? What do we not need? And of course, individually and collectively, there can be a big dialogue or conversation between beliefs, Pisces, and facts, Virgo, going on in all kinds of ways. I'm right, you're wrong, vice versa, etc., etc. Take a deep breath, quiet yourself. Along with that, we're going to have Mercury make 3 waxing inconjuncts to Chiron. That is the 150-degree aspect in the natural zodiac, and that 150-degree aspect is 0 Virgo in the natural zodiac. And so why Mercury, Jupiter are just humming along intuitively, Mercury, Chiron are going, uh-oh, is this really what I'm going to do? Is this really how I'm going to move forward? We can have the self-doubts come in. We can have the procrastinations and excuse-making come in. We also will run up against a natural review of what we can and cannot do in our world right now. That is part of that Virgo Earth reality. This is what I can change. This is what I can't change. So how are we being presented to make self-improvement changes in our world within the circumstances that we find ourselves in space-time? Saturn, Neptune, and Pisces, I just want to escape all that. I got to have a feet on the ground a little bit with Virgo. And of course, Chiron Aries, it either wants to self-heal, initiate all those new self-healing energies, or if we feel frustrated that we don't have the freedom to do what we want in our life, Chiron Aries can be a fighter. It can stir up the energy and go, watch me. And that's part of that Aries energy that goes back and forth between feeling superhuman and insecure. This starts to get involved with Mercury and Chiron in their aspects. So, like Jupiter gives us great opportunities to improve with diet, exercise, and rest, Chiron says, you still got to put energy into it. You still got to work on that self-improvement the best that you can. Finally, Mercury is waning sesquisquadrates to Pluto. And the Sun makes that at the same time, 1 to Pluto, while they have their interior conjunction together. This is Mercury going into disseminating phase with Pluto. And it brings what I like to call, just for simplicity's sake, a mini crisis in consciousness. How do I make sense of my purpose in life through any quote unquote rat race? Here they are in Virgo Capricorn, but it's not a waning trine. It is a square and a half. And so we've got that do of the earth element. And it can bring up some crises in our material world, personally and collectively. But it's all about helping us know what to shed and what to keep. And there can also be, with these aspects, Mercury, Pluto, a weariness, Capricorn, overwhelm, Virgo, around the whole issue of climate change. Oh my gosh, it is just too much for me to change. I'm just one person. Oh, bless my sweet, sweet husband, but we sure go round and round and round and round recycling. Round and round and round about recycling. He throws it in the garbage, I put it in the recycling bin. He throws it in the recycling bin, I put it in the garbage. Honey, we can't recycle that. It just clogs up recycling. Honey, we got to recycle that. So all of us collectively in the world are on our way of learning better use of resources. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be a rather large cycle. I'm putting this slide in through the Mercury retrograde cycles in Earth signs. Just a little reminder for you if you live in the United States. We have 4% of the world's population and we consume 25% of the world's resources. Of that 25% of the world's resources, the upper 10% of income in the USA consume 40% of it. And it creates 40% of the carbon usage. In broad general terms, our consumption is unsustainable with the rest of the world in this country. However, to help you with that sense of futility and overwhelm, Mercury, Pluto, if you are, in the lower 90%, if you're in the middle 50%, you may think you consume a lot, but compared to the rich in this country, you do not. Now, that doesn't mean you get to stop recycling, Leroy. Just trying to give you a little bit of perspective here on this whole resource thing. Oh, one more finally. And so the South Node in Libra waning semi-squares to Mercury. Of course, all those relationship dilemmas and how are we going to navigate them and who do we want to relate to? Of course, we want to renegotiate, Virgo, more equal giving and receiving. And we also may find ourselves wanting to have more spirituality in our relationships with the Pisces polarity. The North Node, remember, we start with the planet and we go clockwise. The North Node is making waxing sexy sesquisquadrates. Gibbous phase to Mercury. North Node in Aries. Finding that courage to change our thoughts and then acting differently from our new perspective. What we have to watch out for is a tendency to doubt ourselves, which can lead us to procrastination and excuse making. Here's the Mercury stationary direct chart. By the time we finish up September 15th, that grand trine is going to be there with the Sun, Uranus, Pluto in the Earth signs, helping us make sense of what we wanted to prioritize with that material world. What we need, what we don't need. However, oppositions all over the place. Are we going to still be caught up in our tensions over right, wrong judgments? Who's right? Who's wrong? Are we still going to be in those polarizing beliefs around facts? Oh, quite likely. As I said, long cycles to change that in the USA chart for us as citizens. So you want to make your best effort to be peaceful in your world and gentle with yourself and others. Finally, I'm going to leave you with my, oops, I didn't change it to Virgo. It just saw that. I'll get that little detail changed. Virgo, I won't miss you. I don't mean to miss you. I always like to leave you with some questions through this retrograde cycle in Virgo. How do I quiet my mind and relax? How do I pace myself through the day with my light? How do I energize my connection to Source? How do I need to unconditionally love myself and others? How do I prioritize the activity in my life? How do I release what is no longer in my highest and best good? Here are our future Mercury retrogrades, and our next webinar is going to be December 11th as we have Mercury retrograde from Capricorn to Sagittarius. And so that will be my next webinar, but I will have an annual forecast in January, and I will do Pluto in Aquarius part 2 in January, because Pluto goes into Aquarius mid-January. I think it's January 19th. And finally, one more time, here is the EA online conference that I'm going to participate in. And so I thank all of you for showing up live, for listening to this later. And I wish you all the best with everything. Here are the aspects in chronological order if you'd like to look at them. And one more slide, and that is it. Any comments or questions, Leroy? If not, thank you all very much, everyone. Deep breaths, pace yourself through it, be gentle with yourself.